Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle.
Dear students, Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 is a complete testing and revision course for the upcoming prelims examination. The program will help you prepare for UPSC prelims through a step-up approach. It is a meticulously designed study plan to organize your preparation and keep you on track towards covering the prelims GS and CSAT syllabus extensively from NCERT to the advanced level. The goal of our Prelims Test Series 2021 program is to exhaustively cover all standard sources of study material, including NCERT, with a study plan to test you at par with UPSC level of questions, thereby improving your chances of clearing the prelims examination. To give multiple revision of the entire syllabus from the perspective of civil service prelims pattern, the test series program will also give you the final revision of all topics and themes before the examination through QIP videos and prelims compass notes. The QIP videos or quality improvement program videos are for speedy revision of all important topics for the upcoming prelims examination. QIP videos are kind of crash course for the prelims examination. And prelims compass are 8 subject-wise prelims compilation of all static and current affair topics important for the upcoming prelims. Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 will include topics test, testing the concept of candidate. It will include thematic test on both the concept and the current affair of that particular theme. It will also include current affair tests covering the monthly current affairs. And there will be full-length test before the final exam to simulate you for the D-Day. There is a link in the description of this video. You can click on the link for registration and to also check out the demo QIP videos.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from your UPSC perspective. Now today we shall discuss the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 11th December 2020. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our examination point of view. In our first discussion, let us take up these two news appearing on page number 4 as well as an editorial on page number 6. Now this news appearing on page number 4 says that Rajasthan to boost farm supply chain, state government to take up post-harvest management projects. A related news appears as an editorial titled Grain and Chaff. It says that the centre must first implement its proposal before continuing talks with the farmers. So in this regard, let us discuss both these news appearing on page number 4 and 6, especially with respect to the steps taken by Rajasthan government in boosting farm supply chain and also suggestions provided by this editorial, particularly the need for balancing farming on one hand as well as marketing of farm produce on the other hand. Now, the Rajasthan government aims to boost farm supply chain based on the fact that the Rajasthan government has already passed 3 bills against central farm laws, and the provisions of one of the bill states or mandates selling of crops at minimum support price. And another important aspect in these bills is that if the crops in Rajasthan are not sold at minimum support price set up by the central government, then it may lead to imprisonment along with fine, and the imprisonment can be from 3 to 7 years, whereas the fine may be approx 5 lakh rupees. So this is the provision which has been incorporated by the state government of Rajasthan. Now here it is important to understand that this is exactly what the farmers are demanding from the central government, that they mandate that every produce or every crop shall be sold at minimum support price, or no crop shall be sold below the minimum support price. And if any entity buys crops below the minimum support price, then such selling of crop below MSP should be illegal. So, based on these demands, the state government of Rajasthan has not only passed these three bills but has also formulated plans in order to expand agricultural supply chain infrastructure in the state and also take up post harvest management projects. Now, this particular news becomes important from the perspective that if a question is asked in the UPSC examination, then you can quote the example of Rajasthan as to how Rajasthan has ensured selling of crops at minimum support price, which is set up by the central government. Now, the three bills which we are referring to are the Essential Commodity Special Provisions and Rajasthan Amendment Bill 2020, and this particular bill empowers state to fix stock limits in order to check hoarding as well as black marketing. So, this particular bill of the state government fixed stock limits in order to ensure a check hoarding as well as black marketing. And this is especially during famine, price rise, natural calamity, or any other extraordinary situation. Now, the second bill, that is the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services, Rajasthan Amendment Bill 2020, ensures that no crop shall be sold below MSP. And here it says that no farming agreement for the sale or purchase of a crop will be valid unless the price paid for the agricultural produce is equal to or greater than the prevailing minimum support price announced by the central government according to Farmers Agreement on Price Assurances Bill. So basically it mandates that no crop will be sold below MSP. And according to the third bill, Rajasthan government may notify a fee or a cess on such produce bought or sold by a corporate or trader in a trade area. So these are the three bills which have been introduced by the Rajasthan Assembly. And based on these bills, the Rajasthan government has formulated plans to expand agricultural supply chain infrastructure and also take up post harvest management projects. Now, accordingly, Rajasthan government will facilitate loans from certain banks, and these banks have been authorized to disburse loan to farmers as well as cooperative societies, including self-help groups. Now, these loans, which will be disbursed by the bank to the farmers, will actually help to develop supply chains, including logistics for the farmers. And this will include construction of new warehouses, cold storages, grading and sorting units, primary processing centers, fruit ripening chambers, etc. And this overall will strengthen the supply chain in the state. And this will effectively help farmers in storing produce for a longer period of time, facilitating movement of produce from farm to warehouse and then from warehouse to place of selling, and it will also ensure that produce are sold not below the minimum support price. So this is what this particular news highlights on page number 4. Now let us go through what has been discussed in this particular editorial appearing on page number 6. Now, as already mentioned, this editorial highlights the need for a balance between farming as well as marketing of farm produce. So, considering this balance, the central government has offered a written assurance to the farmers for these aspects, namely that the fact that government procurement at minimum support price would remain. Second, proposals to amend farm laws to deal with the following concerns of the farmer, namely to deal with farmers' concern, especially regarding parity between state-run mandis and private mandis. Second, with respect to registration of traders, and third, with respect to having a dispute resolution mechanism in the. However, the farmers have rejected these written assurances from the center and have said that they will intensify their strike. So, based on the stalemate between farmers as well as central government, this editorial says that the central government needs to understand the fact that farmers are at the mercy of union government policies on one hand and also at market forces. And based on these understandings, that the fact that farmers are at the mercy of union government policies as well as market forces, the government needs to relook this entire farmers protest not through political angle but rather as a just demand from the farmers. And accordingly, this editorial has highlighted this protest as a battle of unequals between farmers on one hand as well as between the government on the other hand. So the editorial says that the government must look at just settlement of demand and should not view this protest having any political cause. Now, regarding this battle of unequals, the farmers have rejected these written assurances from the central government, and they have intensified their protest based on recent examples where farmers were forced to sell their agricultural produce much below the minimum support price. Now, another cause of worry highlighted by the farmers is that small farmers will be forced to sell at market prices which is way below MSP, and accordingly will be at the mercy of corporates to sell away their produce below the input price or even below the availing market prices. Another aspect highlighted in this editorial is that if farmers are to rely solely on market prices, then in the future they may bear unsustainable losses. And because of this, small as well as marginal farmers may be forced to change their occupation. So, overall, this editorial suggests that there is a need to balance farming as well as marketing of farm produce in order to ensure food security or in order to ensure that food security in the country is not hampered. So, overall, this editorial suggests that the government should ensure such measures which not only ensures farmer interest but also inspire confidence among farmers, especially with respect to selling their agricultural produce. Thus, both these news becomes very important from the perspective of both prelims as well as mains examination. Now, both these news becomes important from the perspective of prelims as well as mains examination. Now, in the mains, it gets covered under GS paper 3, especially related to food processing as well as supply chain management. And in the prelims, this topic gets covered under economic and social development. Now, this particular question was asked by UPSC in GS paper 3 in 2019. The question was, what are the reformative steps taken by the government to make food grain distribution system more effective? Now, this question was with respect to food procurement as done by the Food Corporation of India. Now, this topic can be found in the Economic Survey Volume 1 of 2019-20, and this topic appears on page number 82 and onwards. So, in this regard, it mentions about Food Corporation of India as it says that it was set up in 1965 under the Food Corporations Act 1964, and the primary duty of Food Corporation of India was to purchase, store, move, transport, distribute, and sell food grains and other foodstuffs. And the main objectives of FCI are procurement of food grains from farmers at minimum support prices announced by the government, distribution of food grains to consumers through public distribution system, particularly the vulnerable sections of the society at affordable prices, and maintenance of buffer stock of food grains for food security and price stability. So overall, the Food Corporation of India is mandated to serve the interest of producers and consumers alike. Now, another important aspect highlighted in the economic survey is that it says that subsequent to this mandate of FCI, the government has emerged as the single largest procurer and holder of food grains. And the government in this regard procures around 40 to 50% of total market surplus of rice as well as wheat. The survey further mentions about Punjab and Haryana. It says that in some states like Punjab and Haryana, this share of purchase by the government is as high as 80 to 90%. So overall, the survey says that because of this, the government has become the largest buyer of rice and wheat and virtually has become a monopsonist in the domestic grain market. Now, monopsonist refers to a single buyer in the market, and this has made the government a dominant player in the agrarian market, crowding out private trade. So, the government highlights that because of MSP at which the government procures these rice and wheat, private trade is unable to flourish as government becomes the only single buyer in the agrarian market, especially regarding rice and wheat. Now, the survey further says that because of this, it disincentivizes the private sector to undertake long term investments in procurement, storage, and processing of these commodities. The survey further says that these procurement operations largely supports the minimum support price that are designed to be indicative prices for producers at the beginning of the sowing season, and floor prices acts as an insurance mechanism for farmers from any fall in prices. Now here you need to understand floor price. Now floor price refers to a certain price below which the government will not allow the crop to be sold. So the survey says that MSP, that is minimum support price, acts as an indicative price before sowing of crops, and based on the indicative price set by the central government, farmers sows their crops. Now, another very interesting fact highlighted by the survey is that it says that the secular increasing trend in these prices, that is, the prices of MSPs, have served to give a signal to farmers to opt for crops which have an assured procurement system. So it highlights that an increase in MSP translates into farmers offering their produce for the open ended procurement by the government. And this also indicates that market prices do not offer remunerative options for the farmers, and hence MSPs, that is minimum support price, have in effect become the maximum prices rather than the floor price. So, by going through the report of this survey, we understand that the government wants private trade to flourish in the agrarian market, and the government prefers that agrarian produce are sold at market prices, and the government does not want MSP to become maximum support price. Thus, both these articles becomes important when read along with the economic survey. So, in this regard, please go through the economic survey and also the video which has been made by Baswa sir, which is available on eLearn platform with respect to various aspects which have been covered in the economic survey. So, with this discussion, let's move to the next article. The next news to be discussed appears as a lead article on page number 6. It says, "All is now fair in India's ailing pedagogic spaces." Reconciling the new technological environment with child psychology and educational theory has not been easy. So, this article has been primarily critical of online mode of learning for children and has questioned the intellectual development of children, especially through online learning. In this regard, the article suggests that there is a need to look for alternative mode of learning which includes stage-wise distinctions and age-specific provisions for children studying in different classes. Further, this article also highlights about the impact of online education on children, especially with respect to their interpersonal skills, social skills, and also suggests certain pitfalls with respect to online learning. Further, in this discussion, apart from whatever has been discussed in this article, let us also learn certain aspect with respect to new education policy 2020, as it also discusses about technology use and integration in one of its chapters. Now, this topic becomes important primarily from the perspective of GS paper 2, especially with respect to issues relating to development and management of education. So, first of all, let us go through the summary of the thoughts which have been highlighted in this article. Now, as already mentioned, that it says that since there is no alternative to online learning because of COVID-19, this has erased the need to make stage-wise distinctions and age-specific provisions. Further, rural schools and the children are the worst sufferers, and because of this, we see mobile based learning, especially among rural as well as poor kids, because their parents cannot afford a laptop for their children. This article says that online mode of learning as an alternative source of study, especially during the COVID-19 period, has impacted rural children the most. Now, because of COVID 19, a substantial amount of time was lost in the lockdown period, and because of this, proper education to children in studying in different classes cannot be imparted. So, in order to make for the loss of time, various schools have slashed their syllabus to ensure completing of course, as it will also ensure that students pass to the next classes. Now, this article also highlights hardship about teachers, as they not only have to cope with the new methods of teaching, especially through online education, but also have to devote substantial amount of screen time with respect to messaging and responding to students' query. Now, this article further says that online mode of education only focuses on result oriented study. And this focus only on a result oriented study, especially by various private institutes, will diminish the charm of learning or admiring various subjects, which helps to develop deep fascination or curiosity among students. So, what the author is trying to highlight is that students will study these subjects only to pass in the examination or only to secure better marks rather than admiring a particular subject or developing deep fascination or curiosity about any specific subject. So, this may lead to over competitiveness among children without having the ability to like or dislike any particular subject. Further, the article also questions these competing claims made by private coachings to enhance intellectual growth of children. And this aspect is questioned by the author because of too much emphasis only on result oriented study. Now, another pitfall highlighted in this article is that there are certain institutes which prepare students from a very early age to secure job in a particular set of field. For example, students are taught coding from a very early stage without understanding why they are taught so. And this is being done so that they end up in the information technology sector. So it says that making children prepare for job from a very early stage robs them from enjoying their childhood. And the example highlighted here is that teaching such students about coding without making them understand its implication. Now this molds cognitive ability towards demand driven world, and this overall hampers the real intellectual growth of a child. Now, because of over competition among private players, especially in the education sector, to target young students, they market special terms such as development of analytical skills or critical inquiry in a children. Now, use of these fascinated terms easily attract parents for a secure future of their child without actually knowing about the real meaning of these important terms and without understanding as to what actually the private players are about to offer such children in the name of development of analytical skill as well as critical inquiry. And again, the overall focus of such private players is on result oriented education. Now, another pitfall articulated here is that children who are using these smartphones and laptops are glued to their screen. So, the screen time of students or the time spent on a screen has tremendously increased. And this increased screen time has also resulted in reduced interaction with other students. Now, the article says that this may hamper a child's interpersonal skills. Another problem highlighted in this article is that most of the parents are very much fascinated by early or premature cognitive development of their child. For example, if a child of class 5 is able to solve maths of class 6, then their parents becomes extremely happy. Now, this aspect has been referred as precocity and it is often admired as an intellectual virtue. But the problem here is that this might lead to imbalance in the natural pace of intellectual maturation or development of a child. So, overall, this article does not actually support this idea of precocity, which refers to early or premature cognitive development of a child. Further, too much emphasis on online learning reduces child's freedom to admire and learn different skill sets such as painting, music, acting, sports, etc. And this is also because of the fact private players or private educational institutions inculcate competitiveness from a very young age based on a demand driven world. And this idea is also supported by the parents of such children because even the parents want that the children must have a job as soon as they complete their graduation. So, online education in a way reduces the ability of diversity of a student and only make them competitive with respect to their fellow classmates. Now, another significant aspect highlighted in this article is that children's unlimited access to internet may foster them to develop certain illegal or immoral habits such as online gambling, pornography, or extreme use of violent form of entertainments. And all these may in a way impact the overall development or understanding of the world by the children. Now, these can be said to be some of the important pitfalls which have been highlighted in this particular article regarding online education. However, because of COVID 19, online education has become a reality, so we have to cope up with all the challenges we might face in the near future. So, it is in this regard the new education policy of 2020 has also introduced a chapter titled Technology Use and Integration. So, let us go through some of the important highlights of this particular chapter of New Education Policy of 2020. Now, this chapter on technology use and integration in the new education policy of 2020 highlights the bi-directional relationship between education and technology. It says that while education will play a very critical role in this transformation, technology itself will play an important role in the improvement of educational process and outcomes. So, two aspects have been highlighted here: educational processes and educational outcomes. And this transformation is regarding transforming the entire nation into digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. This chapter further says that technology will impact education in number of ways or in multiple ways which cannot be foreseen in the present time. So, new technologies involving artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchains, smart boards, handheld computing devices, adaptive computer testing for student development, and other forms of educational software and hardware will not just change what students learn in the classroom but also how they learn such new things. So, the new education policy believes that there is a requirement of extensive research both on technological as well as educational fronts. Further, the new education policy also emphasizes on use of technology in order to improve multiple aspects of education. So it highlights that use and integration of technology to improve multiple aspects of education will be supported and adopted provided these interventions are rigorously and transparently evaluated in relevant context before they are scaled up. So obviously there is a need for extensive research with respect to use of technology as well as education. Now, the policy further says that an autonomous body, namely the National Educational Technology Forum or NETF, will be created to provide a platform for the free exchange of ideas on the use of technology to enhance learning, assessment, planning, administration, and so on. So, the point to be highlighted here is that emphasis has been made on enhancing learning, assessment, planning, as well as administration, and all will be done with respect to use of technology, and these will be both for school and higher education. Further, it highlights that the aim of NETF will be to facilitate decision making on the induction, deployment, and use of technology by providing to the leadership of education institutions, state, central governments, as well as other stakeholders the latest knowledge and research, along with the opportunity to consult and share best practices. So, overall, we can say NETF or National Education Technology Forum will have the following functions: A. Provide independent evidence based advice to central and state government agencies on technology based interventions. B. Build intellectual and institutional capacities in educational technology. C. Envision strategic thrust areas in this domain. And D. To articulate new directions for research and innovation. So these four can be said to be the important functions of NETF. And this aspect becomes very important from our examination perspective as functions of NETF may be asked in the upcoming mains examination. Now, another aspect highlighted in this policy is with respect to teachers' training so that they can be developed to become effective online educators. So, the policy says that it cannot be assumed that a good teacher in a traditional classroom will automatically be a good teacher in an online classroom. So, the emphasis will shift from classroom teaching to online teaching. And apart from changes required in pedagogy, online assessments will also require a different approach. So the government is willing to take a different approach with respect to assessment of teachers, especially regarding their online classroom teaching ability. So the policy says that there are a number of challenges which will come in the way with respect to conducting online examinations, especially to judge these teachers or especially to assess these teachers regarding online education. So it highlights that there are a number of challenges to conducting online examinations at scale, including limitation on types of questions that can be asked in an online environment, handling network and power disruptions, preventing unethical practices, etc. Now, another challenge which will be faced will be with respect to certain specific subject or courses. It says that certain types of courses or subjects, such as performing arts and science practical, may have limitations with respect to online or digital education space. And this can be overcome to a partial extent with innovative measures. Now, another aspect highlighted here is that unless online education is blended with experiential and activity based learning, it will tend to become a screen based education with limited focus on social, affective, and psychomotor dimensions of learning. So these can be said to be some of the challenges which needs to be overcome so that we can adapt to the online mode of education, especially by teachers. So, concerning these challenges and constraints, the new education policy has recommended the following key initiatives. It says that there is a need to conduct pilot studies for online education, which should be in parallel to evaluate the benefits of integrating education with online education while mitigating the downsides, and also study related areas such as student device addiction, most preferred formats of e-content, etc. Another set of recommendation is with respect to enhancing digital infrastructure in the country. Then it talks about online teaching platform and tools. Here it says that appropriate existing e-learning platforms such as Swayam Diksha will be extended to provide teachers with a structured, user-friendly and rich set of assistive tools to monitor progress of learners. Now, this set of tools will be a two-way video and two-way audio interface for holding online classes. Another recommendation is with respect to content creation, digital repository, as well as dissemination of information. Next recommendation is a very important one which says addressing the digital divide in India. Now, here the recommendation highlights that given the fact that there still persists a substantial section of the population whose digital access is highly limited, the existing mass media such as television, radio, community radio will be extensively used for telecast and broadcast. So it highlights a very important point where it says use of television, radio, and community radio for use of telecast and broadcast of educational courses. Now, such educational programs will be made available 24/7 in different languages to cater to the varying needs of student population. So, the government is also planning for an educational program which can be run on television or radio 24/7, where it says that a special focus on content in all Indian languages will be emphasized and required. The next set of recommendation is with respect to virtual labs. Here it says that existing e-learning platforms such as Diksha, Swam, and Swam Prabha will also be leveraged for creating virtual labs so that all students have equal access to quality practical and hands-on experiment-based learning experiences. It says that the possibility of providing adequate access to SEDG students and teachers through suitable digital devices such as tablets with preload content will be considered and developed. Now, SEDG here refers to socio-economically disadvantaged groups. The next policy mentions about training and incentives for teachers. It says that teachers will undergo rigorous training in learner-centric pedagogy, and also they will learn how to become high quality online content creator themselves. And this will be done by using online teaching platforms and tools. Further, there will also be emphasis on teachers' role in facilitating active student engagement with the content and with each other as well. Next, the policy mentions about online assessment and examination. Here it says that National Assessment Center, school boards, NTA, and other identified bodies will design and implement assessment frameworks encompassing design of competencies, portfolio, rubrics, standardized assessments, and assessment analytics. Now, it further says that studies will also be undertaken to pilot new ways of assessment using education technologies focusing on 21st century skills. Now, another point highlighted here is with respect to blended models of learning. Now, here the policy highlights that the importance of face to face in person learning is fully recognized, and accordingly, different effective models of blended learning will be identified for appropriate replication for different subjects. And lastly, it mentions about laying down standards. It says that as research on online digital education emerges, NETF and other appropriate bodies shall set up standards of content, technology, and pedagogy for online digital teaching and learning. And these standards will overall help to formulate guidelines for e learning by state boards, schools, school complexes, higher education institutions, etc. So, these are some of the suggestions provided in the new education policy to enhance pedagogy with respect to online education. Thus, this article becomes very important with respect to the changing times where we are trying to adapt online mode of learning in times of COVID-19. So, with this discussion, let's move to the next news article. The next news to be discussed appears as an article on page number 7. It says Iran's calculated risk. Iran is enhancing its nuclear program, which can be reversed if talks with the United States are revived. So, the author in this article discusses the dynamics which are at play, especially with respect to revival of Iran nuclear deal. Now, the Iran nuclear deal was reached under the Obama administration based on certain geopolitics of Middle East. Now, Obama administration believed that if Iran nuclear deal was reached, then it will refrain Iran from making a nuclear bomb. So the P5 plus 1 reached an agreement with Iran in 2015 with respect to the nuclear deal. And as per Obama's administration's thought process, it prevented Iran from making a nuclear bomb which would have destabilized the entire Middle East region. However, this did not stop Iran from claiming its political as well as economic might in the region. Now, two countries, namely Saudi Arabia as well as Israel, were against the US nuclear deal. And they did not like the fact that P5 plus 1 countries were making a nuclear deal with Iran. Now, in 2016, in the United States, the regime changed and the administration was passed on from Obama administration to that of the Trump administration under the Republican government. And Donald Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, making both Saudi Arabia as well as Israel very happy and also reimposed sanctions back on Iran. And this policy pursued by Donald Trump was referred as the maximum pressure policy. And this allowed Israel to carry out various operations against Iran. So the problem here is that after this recent election in United States, again the Democratic nominee Joe Biden or Joseph Biden has won the election and Iran will expect that the nuclear deal will be revived again. But this is not what the Saudi Arabia or Israel prefers, as they do not want Iran to reach the nuclear deal with United States. Now the question remains as to why Israel and Saudi were opposing the deal. So Iran was backing non-state militia, especially in Yemen. And in Yemen, the Houthi rebels were fighting the Saudi Arabian government. And in this, Iran was providing direct support to Yemenis. Further, both Israel and Saudi Arabia aims to become the dominant power in the region, and that is why they are opposing any sort of nuclear deal with Iran. The Iran nuclear deal has also led to a Cold War between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And as stated, although the nuclear deal has prevented Iran from making a nuclear bomb, however, it has also allowed Iran to increase its economic and political influence in the region. And this has become a cause of concern for both Israel as well as Saudi Arabia. Now, here we also mentioned that as per Donald Trump's maximum pressure policy, this also allowed Israel to carry out various operations against Iran. Some instances of the operation was that in 2018, as per an Israeli mission, it stole thousands of documents related to Iran's nuclear program. An Iranian nuclear scientist also came under attack. Further, in Syria, where Iran had deployed militias backing the government of Bashar al Assad, Israel continued to bomb Iranian targets. And again, in this context, Israel has recently assassinated a top Iranian nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, and this has been done in order to provoke Iran to take an action which might further derail the process of revival of nuclear deal. So basically, Israel as well as Saudi Arabia does not want the Iran nuclear deal to revive again, as there are chances of revival of Iran nuclear deal because the Democratic nominee Joe Biden has won the US presidential election and it is quite likely that he may revive the nuclear deal which was started by Obama administration. So based on the activities done by Israel, if Iran retaliates out a humiliation, the outgoing Trump administration and Israel could launch strikes on Iran's nuclear facility with an aim to permanently close the diplomatic path for Biden administration. So here we can say that the hands of Iran are tied with respect to taking any retaliation against Israel or even Saudi Arabia which might not be in the interest of United States of America. So considering all these geopolitical dynamics, Iran so far has not retaliated against Israel. However, Iran has passed a bill to start the uranium enrichment once again. Further, Iran has also stated that it will stop the access of UN authorities to the nuclear sites within 2 months if sanctions are not removed against Iran. So with the coming of Biden administration, what Iran expects is number one, revival of the Iran nuclear deal, and second, dropping of the sanctions which the Trump administration has imposed against Iran. So, based on these activities, it will depend as to how the Biden administration move forwards with the Iran nuclear deal. However, nuclear enrichment done by Iran can be reversed if the nuclear deal progresses. Thus, this article highlights certain important developments in the Middle East, especially related to Iran nuclear deal. Now, as of now, the news is in transition, so let us wait for the final outcome, especially with respect to Iran nuclear deal under the Joe Biden administration. Now, from your prelims point of view, some of the Iran's nuclear facilities becomes important. These are Arak, Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan, as well as Bushehr. Now, these sites may be asked in your upcoming prelims examination. So, please remember these nuclear sites with respect to Iran. Now, this news becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 2 in your mains examination, and from your prelims perspective, this topic gets covered under current events of international importance. With this, let's move to the next news of discussion. Now, the last news to be discussed appears on page number 13, and this news is with respect to important places which has been in news with respect to world map. Now, this says Israel said to open up parts of Herod's palace. Now, the Herod's palace is in the West Bank in Israel. So, in this regard, if a question is asked with respect to Herod's palace, you must know that it is based in West Bank in Israel. It says that Herodium is a popular tourism destination is near a Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank, but falls in the area where Israel exercises military and civilian control. Now, the archaeologists say that Herod decided towards the end of his life to bury his palace using ground from below the hill it was perched upon until the outline of the structure was no longer visible. So, now this palace will be open to public. An important aspect is that this palace is situated in Israel. So, if a question is asked with respect to Herod's palace, you must know that it is situated in the West Bank in Israel. Now, after our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. The question is, which of the following nuclear sites is not situated in Iran? Options are A. Bushehr, B. Arak, C. Chashma, and D. Natanz. Now, coming to the answer of yesterday, the answer is A. The question was, consider the following statements regarding Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary. Statement 1. It lies on the southern bank of river Brahmaputra. This statement is correct. Statement 2. Rhinos are no more sighted here after 2020 Assam floods. No, this statement is incorrect. As you can see in the solution, in Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary, there are now 102 rhinos, which is a 10% increase over the last 6 years. And Pobitora has exceeded its rhino bearing capacity and is overpopulated. With respect to the natural boundary of Pobitora, it says its natural boundary of the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary is the Garanga Beel on the south and the river Brahmaputra on the north. So with this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you.